Hello everyone. I wanted to do some special patron-only content today for all of you that are so awesome for supporting me on Patreon. This is going to be a video just for you all. It's not going to be released to the general public or available anywhere except for my patron-only Patreon. It's inspired by a YouTube video that Laura O'Brien had actually done last year, 2018, about 10 things you didn't know about me. In this case, it's sort of 10 things you may or may not have known about me. Some of these I think I have possibly mentioned in passing on social media. Others I don't know if I have or not, but I thought it would be a fun video to do. Something a little different, a little more personal, and something just for you all. Because I really do appreciate all the support of everyone on my Patreon. So, this is a list of 10 things that you may or may not know about me. The first thing number one, is I actually am severely dyslexic and dyscalculic, which means the dyscalculic means that I switch numbers, so I have a hard time with math. Algebra is like the bane of my existence because it is an absolute nightmare when you have both of these learning disabilities. The dyslexia was a real issue when I was in school. Fun fact about me, I did not learn to read until I was in second grade. I was in special remedial reading classes up until then. I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in first grade, the beginning of first grade, because I could not learn how to read. So there's a whole fun story with that. But I was diagnosed with a learning disability. I was in special classes when I was in school. I did eventually learn how to read, which is super good. Sort of ironic that in my adult life I'm an author, but I actually had a really hard time with literacy when I was a lot younger. Life's funny that way sometimes. I do still struggle with dyslexia. It's not something that you have it and then it goes away. I've just learned to compensate fairly well for it, which is the whole point of the remedial classes. I can read upside down, I can read forwards and backwards, I can read all sorts of funky ways because my brain sort of sees letters in all directions anyway. I think that's part of the reason that Old Irish does so well for me, because it's a non-standard orthography. The spelling's always really weird, and my brain really likes that. Otherwise, spelling is a nightmare for me. If it wasn't for spell check, it would be really obvious that I can't spell. And I'm super grateful for all of my copy editors through my different, with my publisher. I've had a couple copy editors now through Moonbooks. Because trust me, it is not easy copy editing my manuscripts because of this issue. I also appreciate for those of you that support my fiction writing and my self-published work. You will find typos and homonym errors, and that is a result of the fact that I do have a learning disability. And I literally can't see them when I read things. I have to proofread things 12 times, 20 times before I'm going to catch mistakes. So doing it by myself is a pretty complicated business. So that's point number one. I know I have mentioned this before on social media, but a little more background to the story. Point number two, just sort of a random fun fact. I have never lived more than 10 miles from the Atlantic Ocean. That's true. I was actually born within, I think it was a quarter mile of the Atlantic Ocean in a hospital that's right on the shoreline, and I've pretty much lived my entire life. Some of this, of course, is because my dad, growing up, my dad was in the Navy, the United States Navy, but even beyond that, even as in my own adult life, I've always lived at the most within, I think 10 miles is the furthest away I've ever lived. Currently, I think I'm about 5 or 6 miles away from the ocean, and always fairly close to some body of water. I don't know if that means anything, just a little random bit of trivia. Always very close to the ocean, which is a good thing because I really love the ocean and I love water, so perfectly happy to stay living nearby it. Point number 3, kind of tying in a little bit to that, sort of distance being on my mind. The furthest I have ever been away from home, living on the east coast of the United States, the furthest I've ever been away from there is San Jose, California. That's kind of a little bit of a fun fact because I have been to Iceland and I have been to Ireland, but actual physical distance-wise, Dublin is closer to where I live in the United States than San Jose, California is. I know, kind of weird, but that tells you how big the United States is. Let me see. Point number 4, fun fact number 4 about me. I did legally change my first name. It's true. The first name I have now, it is a name that my parents picked for me, Morgan. That was actually their second choice of name for me. The name that they actually gave me when I was born is the result of my parents getting into a huge fight and not being able to agree on what to name me, fighting for several days, and then coming up with this compromise name. I hated my legal first name my entire childhood. I hated it so much that I had always sworn when I was a teenager that I would legally change it as soon as I possibly could. I didn't change it as soon as I possibly could, but I did change it when I was an adult. And no, I will not tell you what my first name was. I hate it. I hate it. Best thing I ever did was to change it. I did try to stick with a name my parents chose for me. Sometimes I sort of wish I'd gone with something just totally different, give myself a new, different fun name, particularly because Morgan is one of those names that you find all over Celtic paganism. It's really, really common, which was not, of course, why I chose it. My mother actually really liked it because it's a breed of horse. So that's the story behind the name Morgan, and why I have it is my mother liked the name because it was a breed of horse, and my dad just liked it. He thought it was a cool name. It's a Welsh boy's name, which I'm okay with. You know, as an adult, I like it because it's a unisex name. It's not gendered. It can be male or female, so that's pretty cool. It suits me very well. But I had wanted to stick with something that was a name my parents had given me. Yeah, not sure that was the best life choice, but at the time when I actually did legally change it, that seemed to be the respectful option, so that was what I went with. And the name that I was given at birth never needs to be spoken again. It's true. So, point number 5. This is one that I have mentioned before, but I also want to mention it here. I do have post-traumatic stress disorder, which is a result of sexual abuse when I was a child. So I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, and that, much like the dyslexia, is not the sort of thing that happens then you just get over it. I'm a really big advocate for sexual abuse survivors, for people who are living with post-traumatic stress disorder, for mental health in general, all of that kind of stuff. That really is a huge reason why in my fiction, in my novel series, for those of you who haven't read it, my main character goes through sexual trauma, basically. She's a rape survivor throughout the course of the story. And it was really important for me to depict that in my fiction. And she ends up with post-traumatic stress disorder, and sort of goes through having that and learning how to cope with that. And that was a really important thing for me to include in my fiction as someone who has gone through those things in real life. I wanted to show that depicted as realistically as possible in fiction, because I feel like when things like that are shown in fiction, they're not generally handled well, or generally handled really horribly. So I wanted to show it not just more realistically, because that wasn't exactly the point, but to show that people can go through those things and still be strong, valuable people, that you can have PTSD and still be a strong, valuable person. It doesn't ruin your life. You can live with it. You can move on. things like that. So if you have read my fiction and you ever wondered why I had my character deal with that, because that's like a huge no-no these days, not having female characters go through sexual assault. That's why I did it. It was a very important thing for me to have my character experience, to show readers what that can be like and how people can get through that and still have a sense of worth while dealing with actual consequences, not just waking up the next day and everything's fine. Like I said, she does end up with PTSD because of it, and then has to deal with all of the fallout from that. So, there you go. Something that you probably didn't know. Most of you probably didn't know. Point number 6, fact number 6 that you did not already know about me. I actually wrote and published my first book when I was 31 years old. I am now 40. I was motivated by a project I was doing for an organization I belonged to at the time. And when I was doing it, part of the project was to sort of repaganize material from the Commedia Gadelica, which is a public domain work from Scotland. And when I was finished with it, there was so much material, and it seemed like such a valuable addition to the community at large that I really wanted to put it out there for people. So I decided to self-publish it. And that was the first step that got me into writing. From there, within, I want to say a year or two, I ended up being offered a contract by a very small publisher for a book called A Child's Eye View of the Fairy Faith. That's out of print now. And so that was my first sort of book that wasn't self-published. I learned some valuable things with that project. And then within 3 years, I think I had my first contract with Moon Books, who's the publisher I've been with since then. So, but that's how I got into writing. I did not start till I was 31. I had written a little bit in high school, but really had not written most of my adult life. And then I got into fiction in 2014, I think. A friend of mine encouraged me, after I'd been writing the nonfiction for several years, to try National Novel Writing Month, just for fun. And I did. And I was talking about the projects I was working on it, enough people were interested in it, that I decided I would self-publish that, just so people could have the chance to read it. And then that turned into a whole series of books. So, you never know sometimes where life's going to take you. But if you are interested in writing, you know, whatever age you happen to be, don't ever feel like it's too late to get started. Because I think no matter what point you're at, no matter how old you are, how young you are, you know, it's always an option as something to get into. Point number 7, sort of building off of that, I actually have 3 bestsellers through Moon Books. Their definition of a bestseller is a book that has sold 5,000 copies or more. I have Pagan Portals Fairy Witchcraft and Pagan Portals Bridget, which both have sold over 5,000. And I have Pagan Portals The Morrigan, which has sold, I think it's closing on 15,000 right now. That's by far my bestseller through Moon Books. So, that is exciting. I love writing. It's just something that I really enjoy doing. I like feeling like I'm able to help get information out there and to connect to people. So I don't picture myself stopping writing anytime soon. Hopefully other people also find that valuable. Hopefully. Fun fact number 8 that you might not know about me, or might. I love languages. You can kind of see my little dictionary collection on the shelf back there. I don't know that I'm fluent in any of them, including English. I've kind of given up on English. It's a lost cause. I do speak, let me think, German, some Latin, Old Irish, Modern Irish, some Spanish. I used to be fluent in Japanese. I taught myself Japanese so I could watch anime without subtitles, which is an interesting reason, I guess, to learn a language. But, you know, that's true. I learned Old Irish purely out of spite. So, talking about what motivates me to learn languages, because I found out a lot of the translations of Old Irish material were really crappy, and it made me really mad. So then I learned the language so that I could read mythology and such in the original language and not have to rely on a translation. So entirely motivated by spite on that one. Oh, and I'm learning Welsh. So I have a little bit of Welsh, not a ton, but I'm working on it. Oh, and Scots, which is not the same as Scottish Gaelic. I do understand a little bit of Gaelic because it's very similar to Old Irish in places. But Scots is a dialect and or language. There's a whole debate about that. That a lot of the ballad material is written in. So I've sort of been working on learning that and being able to translate from that. It's helped out a lot with different work that I do. So it does not take much to motivate me to want to learn a language, sadly. I wish I have a friend who he picks up languages like that. He literally learned Hungarian in like a weekend, and I am not exaggerating when I say that. So I wish that I had that sort of skill. I don't. I have to work at it and put in effort and all that fun stuff. And I'm definitely much better retaining it in particular ways. I'm terrible at spelling. I'm terrible at grammar. But I find that as long as I can get, the gist of it, I can understand the material. That's really my point with it. So that's all I care about for the most part, except for Old Irish, which for some reason my brain just really likes, which is a good thing. So point number 9 that you might not know about me. I have 24 tattoos, including one on the back of my head. You can't see it anymore because I've grown my hair out, but it's there. I have pictures. And at one point I had 8 piercings. I did take all my piercings out, including my earrings. I don't have any piercings anymore. But there was a point when I had 8. 9? No, I take that back. I had 9. I had 9 piercings, 24 tattoos. Don't anymore have the piercings anyway. I do still have the tattoos. So if you ever see me in person, then you will realize that I do actually have, let me see if I can show you in the video, I actually have quite a lot of ink. I think that tends to surprise people who've never met me in real life. If I'm only like a face on the computer, or a byline on articles or books, don't anticipate that I'm going to have quite as many tattoos as I do. But yeah, I started getting them when I was 18. I got my first one right after I turned 18, actually. And at this point I have quite a lot of them. So if you ever meet me in person, don't be surprised. Lots of tattoos. And point number 10, item number 10, fun fact, and a lot of people know, I am slightly afraid of spiders, although I wouldn't say I'm phobic exactly. It's just not my favorite animal. But other than that, I actually really like animals. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of snakes. I'm not afraid of rats. I've always wanted a snake as a pet. When I was much younger, I had a billion different kinds of pets. Probably the weirdest pet I ever had, I used to have doves. I had 2 doves. I do not recommend doves, by the way. They are literally the most annoying bird you could possibly have, especially inside a house. Extremely loud and mean. Loud and mean. Don't get them. But I did have doves. I had gerbils, hamsters, mice, rats. Rats are actually wonderful, wonderful animals. They make amazing pets. They're super smart. They're very sweet. I do recommend getting rats. Great pets. Let's see, I had rabbits. I mentioned the doves. I had zebra finches. I've had parakeets. Obviously cats and dogs. My sister had guinea pigs. I never had guinea pigs myself. They are pretty cool though. What else did we have? I'm not even going to be able to remember it all. It was kind of like a rolling menagerie. Lots of different kinds of animals. My sister, when we were older, we used to get riding lessons. My sister has horses. Now she has horses and cows and a goat and literally a menagerie, a whole little farm. Very cool with animals. I love them. Definitely not many that really freak me out or I would be concerned by. Where I live is sort of in the suburbs, but it's this weird, like, rural suburb area. We have fisher cats and coyotes in my neighborhood. Wildlife abounds, raccoons. It's not uncommon to see deer, wild turkey, all that kind of stuff. So always very fond of animals and animals as pets. I've always liked camping. That kind of stuff doesn't faze me. Not someone who gets freaked out by snakes or mice or anything like that. Doesn't bother me. So that's a quick list, I guess 20 minutes, but a fairly quick list of 10 things you may or may not have known about me. If you have any questions about any of this or comments or anything you want to add, feel free in the comment section. Otherwise, I hope you feel like you maybe got to know me a little bit better. And I will try to make another video soon. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.